Good morning, everyone.
Hello, Doherty.
I've been informed by your chair that I'm going to be short. So, the board passed a resolution giving authority for Bent Tree Learning Tree to the board. What is Bent Tree Learning Tree? This is a program that intermittently has occurred where there's 6 or 7 sessions that you can attend. It's about learning about Bent Tree. One may be on our financials, one may be on operations, one may be on capital or governing documents. So if you want to learn about your community, you want to attend this. Well, we haven't had one for the last few years. So now the board has the authority to do it, and we're going to have our first Bent Tree Learning Tree next March or April. So that's pretty exciting. The search committee's been busy for our new general manager. I understand we have a lot of very good resumes in. They're going to continue to get more resumes. This is important, but not urgent. So they're going to get it right. October is an important month for us. We're going to be doing the budget for next year. And this year we're going to have 3 sessions, one on revenue, one on operations, one on capital. You are invited, and we want everyone to attend that can. And you'll learn a lot about our financial status if you attend and participate. And the last thing, road paving this month will occur. And you'll be notified as to when that happens and where it's going to happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Artie.
Thanks, Doherty.
Okay, since we met last, just want to recognize the folks who participated in the work that's been done. The Keep Bent Tree Beautiful group did some hardscaping at the mail center, a corner there where we could just never seem to get anything to grow. There wasn't ready access to water, and so they did put some rocks and just kind of created a space that's pleasing as you come into the mail center on the left, and we don't have to worry about trying to get something to grow there. The Beaver Run Bridge, that right by the beach pavilion, the entrance to the Beaver Run Trail, the old bridge was pretty dilapidated, and that was removed by BTCI, and they put a drainage pipe under and filled in that gully that was under the bridge that was continuing to erode. And then a group of folks put some big rocks down and made that pretty and safe going through, so you don't hopefully fall off the edge, and it will address the erosion problem there as well as provide a walkover path to the entrance to the Beaver Run Trail. So next time you're at the beach, check that out. It looks really nice. The Raptor Program we had on the 24th was well attended. We had 52 people at the first session and 47 at the second session. I think everybody really enjoyed that. The lady did an awesome job. John did film that, so I guess that'll be available at some point for anybody who couldn't make it. If they want to watch that on our YouTube channel, we'll have that video. Art and James, thank you. The work is continuing in preparation for the official opening of the watershed trail system, the long trail system that'll be up off of Chestnut Cove. And they put some steps in because as you approach the trail will kind of follow an old logging road, at least the majority of it. And getting to that old logging road, there's this one place where you kind of had to, you could kind of get down there, but if it was wet, people were concerned about getting back up. So they put in a set of steps with a rail to aid in the transition for the approach to that trail. And that turned out great. So thank you, James and Art, for that. Again, Tamarack Treasures next week is the last week for donations, and then the actual Tamarack Treasures event is on October 15th. And I don't know, if you attended the one in May, you'll probably be excited about this one. And if you didn't attend the one in May, you missed it. So make sure you come now. It's this room is transformed into a beautiful, very upscale type boutique, and it's just a wonderful shopping experience, and it's amazing the kinds of things that we're able to offer at great deals. So make sure you come to find your treasure. And they're also featuring some crafty items and homemade items. At this, it's sort of all geared toward the holidays coming up and the winter season. We have the employee luncheon on October 19th, and anybody who's new or hasn't participated, the employee luncheon is something that Lake and Wildlife does for all of the employees of BTCI. So it's an opportunity for us to thank them for their help and support of the organization throughout the year, And it's always a very popular event, so great to support that. The Keep Bent Tree Beautiful fall planting will be on Friday and Saturday, the 28th and 29th. Andy, are you in here? Okay, so Andy Kidd has sent out a lot of information about that, and I'm sure you'll have reminders. So anybody who, this is sort of like a one-shot deal. It's not a committee you have to join or something you have to necessarily commit to long-term. But if you'd like to get out and plant some flowers and learn more about what Keep Bent Tree Beautiful does in our landscape zones up by admin, by the security gate, by the front gate, by the back gate, we have these places that we maintain on behalf of the community. So, you can spend an hour, 2 hours, and see how you enjoy doing that, and just help us transition to the winter color there. Spread new mulch, things like that. So we're moving into our What's Blooming section. So I know I said this last month too, but asters in the fall, they are the grand finale of the season. They are the last feeding opportunity for a lot of pollinators. This one is yellow crownbeard, and I, up until I was preparing for this, I thought yellow crownbeard and wingstem were two names for the same thing, and I've learned they're actually two different plants, very closely related. You have to tell them apart by their leaf configuration, but they're an aster. They're the really tall ones. So, you see them on the roadsides now. They're 4 to 6 feet tall, and some people, I get asked a lot, are those an invasive plant? They're not an invasive plant. They're an aggressive plant. They are native, but they grow profusely in some areas, and they have, for the size of the plant, they have a pretty small flower on the top, and they're kind of messy and raggedy looking. But you see the stem, they kind of have these little flaps, if you will, that makes it look square on the stem, and that's how the name wing stem, sort of like a winged elm, the branches on a winged elm, you might see that kind of square look for them. So they're blooming all over Bent Tree now, especially at the higher elevations. You see just pockets of them on the roadside, and some people's yard, Lori, Steve, are covered in them. But they are they are beneficial to the, okay, so the pull-up challenge, I know. I'm going to give it up here. This is the last time you'll hear about it. Until next spring, when we'll start some new kind of challenge to address the stiltgrass, maybe a little more laid back. But I hope that through this year, everybody has had more awareness of the stiltgrass and what it is. If you haven't, come see me. I'm not going to go into it today, but let me tell you about it. And hopefully you've noticed it more, and our efforts have gotten people to talk about it, and some people addressing it. And we're celebrating the little steps in that. Okay, it has made seed. This was the point I wanted to make sure you knew. What that means is it doesn't do any good to weed whack it anymore. If you weed whack it, you're spreading the seed. And you can tell the seed, it's got the little, if you look at the tops of them, they have the little seeds there. The only thing you can do with it at this point to prevent it, to minimize it for next year, is to pull it up by hand and put it in a trash bag and tie it up and throw it away. Because the point of it is to keep the seed from hitting the ground, because that's what's going to grow next spring. If you haven't weed whacked it already, it's too late. Now, there may be pockets of, in your yard in the shade, you can take a look at it where it hasn't made seed yet. But for the most part, around the community, what I've noticed, it has already gone to seed. So just want to say that you have one more opportunity, which is to pull anything up by hand and put it in a bag. Because I don't think it's matured and dropped the seed on the ground yet. It's still on the plants in most places. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to Huff, who's going to talk about fishing.
My name is Culvert Huffines. Everyone calls me Huff. Just a quick background on my fishing experience. I've got a Coast Guard Master Captain's license, capable of handling vessels up to 200 tons, which is like a Queen Mary, but I wouldn't do that. Have fished all over the world. We have a management company that manages over 60,000 acres of wildlife land for many things, including fishing in ponds and lakes. I've worked with a lot of biologists. I know a little bit about maintenance of lakes and so forth. But what I've learned when I came to Bent Tree is that the type of lakes that we manage are different than mountain lakes, and they're two really different type of mountain lakes. You've got the man-made lake, which is what Lake Tamarack is, and then you've got the natural mountain lakes. And management is similar for both, but a little different as well. There's been an extensive amount of research done here on Lake Tamarack by Peter Kitko and other people many years ago. And it's continued through 2018, and then again we had another study in 2022. Peter's recommendations and research were extensive. Through, I'm assuming, Lake and Wildlife, Peter recommended to the board that certain steps be taken to the lake, including putting down habitat structures to provide cover for the small fry or the small fish that are being hatched out that have no cover. That was turned down by the board. It was attempted again to the board. The board approved it. It was never implemented for some reason. This is history that I've learned from information that I've gotten from Dora and I've gotten from other people, and looking at Peter's extensive research that he's done on the lake, which is really remarkable. In 2018, there was a study done on Lake Tamarack, and it was what's called a shocking study, where they go out and you have arms out on a boat, and they're dragging the water electric current, and it stuns the fish momentarily. They come to the surface, they sample the fish, put them in a live well, and by the time they get back after going through the whole lake, they've got an idea of how many fish are in the lake, what type of fish, what the balance is, the health of the fish. Well, the 2018 study showed that there was an overabundance of small bass in the lake, which were eating a lot of the food. And so over the years, since 2018, there's been 2 or 3 years of stocking of very small bluegill, which provided food, frankly, for the bass, but didn't produce any type of healthy reproduction of bluegill in the lake. The fish that were found in the lake at that time were an adequate number of population of fish, but the bass balance was out of whack, and so the recommendations at that time were to remove any bass that were caught that were 12 inches or less, and to try to reduce the population of small bass to enlarge the bass to grow. A second study was done this spring in 2020, and it was alarming as to the decline of the number of fish in the lake. With Art and Eldon, I got in a boat. They provided the biologist, and I spent a couple hours, maybe 3, on the lake with the biologist, shocking the fish, studying them, harvesting them, putting them in the live well, measuring them when we got back, and looking at them. And the conclusions were as follows. Number one, the lake is like a bathtub today. There were grass carp introduced in the lake a number of years ago. I think there were maybe 2 or 3 stockings, but over 1,000 grass carp were put in the lake because there was a weed problem on the surface of the lake that was creating problems with kayakers, homeowners on the lake. But it turned out that it was overkill. And the grass carp, which today, I caught one the other day, are like this, have eaten every bit of grass and weeds on the bottom of the lake as well as the surface. And because of that, there is no habitat whatsoever for the fish. And because of that, the bluegill population is down to very, very few fish in the lake. And the bass population is still the small bass, generally a pound and a half. I saw a picture today of someone that caught one a little over 2 pounds. It's probably the best fish in the lake at this point. And the fish, when they were harvested from the shocking, we took back and we measured them, we weighed them, and every bass that we caught were very thin. And you measure the condition of a bass not by the big belly, but rather by the thickness of the fish as you look down on the dorsal fin. All these bass were starving. And that's the reason that we don't have any real bass fishing today. Most of the fish have died from lack of food, and the ones that we did harvest through shocking turned out to be maybe 5 or 6 years old but didn't grow, were very thin, and were at the point of starvation. So the recommendations that we have found now that would make a huge difference in the lake are to do 3 or 4 things. One we can't do, the other we can. The first recommendation was to fertilize and lime the lake. Fertilization in a lake creates a bloom. That bloom that's created is the first beginning of the chain of life of fishery. The little fish eat it, the next fish eat the little fish, etc., etc. It's a healthy ecosystem for fish in the lake. We cannot do that, nor can we lime the lake, for 2 reasons. The most important reason is the lake produces our drinking water for about 6 months out of the year. The second reason is that we have a 50-to-1 ratio at Lake Tamarack of water coming in per acre of the lakes. In other words, we have 50 more acres of watershed coming into the lake for every acre we have of the lake, which is 110 acres. That's right at the point of it not being feasible or requiring, because of the flow through the lake, of having to do it every year. The expense is too great, and we would never recommend putting chemicals in the lake, even though it may be possible to do so and through the filtration system. So we can't lime the lake, and we can't fertilize the lake. So what are our next steps? Well, this is what's recommended. There are habitat structures that you can put in the lake that are like Christmas trees. But rather than Christmas trees that lose their ability to hold fish for 6 months, and then the needles drop, and then all you got is another piece of trash in the lake, these habitat structures last, unfortunately, like plastic. They are plastic. They last forever. In this case, that's a good thing for our lake, because those habitat structures will last forever. Our plan is to put in habitat structures, to mark them with, I was thinking, a wood duck decoy, which would be visually nice, and then mark the GPSs and let everyone know where they are, but you'll be able to see them. And they're pretty expensive. They're about $1,000 a piece. And if there's a picture behind me, don't know if there is. Look at that. The ones that we're going to use are going to have a lot more fingers than this one. That's sort of an enlargement. But what it does is it provides habitat for the fry, the small fish, to go in and hide from the bass. Secondly, the second recommendation is a stocking. First year, meaning 2023, we plan on stocking rather large bluegill, large enough so that the little bass that are there now will leave them alone, and at the same time feed the bass with crawfish. Now you wonder, why crawfish? Well, crawfish are the most inexpensive of all the supplemental live feed you can feed bass. And you could put 1,000 pounds of crawfish in there. They're easy for bass to catch. Bass are lazy. If they can catch a crawfish instead of fighting to get a bluegill swimming away from them, that's what they'll feed on. So it'll give the bluegill a year to grow from the large size that we're putting in. The next year, which would be 2024, we're going to stock larger bass. And again, supplement it with crawfish. And the crawfish will then keep the bass away from the bluegill and then create a balance. After 2023, after 2024, after the habitat structures are put in, then we'll get back to a normal restocking every year of whatever needs to be restocked, and a relatively small amount of money of $5,500, $6,000 a year. The third recommendation is we have to create some food in the lake. And so the recommendation from the biologist is to have feeders, and they spread pelleted food, either sinking or floating. I'm not sure yet which is the right one. I'm still working on that. But we're going to put 3 feeders out on each dock, and then we have a number of volunteers who live on the lake that said we would love to buy a feeder, adopt it, take care of the food, and do it from our lakeside residents as well. The biologist's report recommended 20 feeders on the extensive shoreline we have on the lake. I'm not sure if that's not overkill. It's just like an aquarium you have at home. If you feed too much food in the aquarium, you're not doing the fish any good because a lot of the food isn't eaten. So you have to put out just enough food for the fish to want to eat it every day and to eat it up at one time. So we're going to tip our toe in the water with the feeders, and we'll start off and see how it goes. One of the questions that I had about the feeders is, what about bears? Well, the biologist says, and they work on lakes all over North Georgia, they said we have put feeders out in areas where there is a big bear population. They haven't touched them. We've put feeders out in areas where there are no bears, and it's brought bears in. So I'm not sure, frankly, how it's going to work here. But we're going to start off with putting a feeder on the docks, and that's where people with kids that don't have boats can fish and so forth. And we'll try it and see how it goes. When you feed fish, you don't feed them during the winter months because fish almost get dormant from eating during the winter months. They go below what's called the thermocline line, which is a temperature line, and it moves during the year, but they'll go into the deeper water, which actually is warmer, believe it or not, other than the real shallow areas. And so the feeding will go from March all the way to maybe the 1st of November, and then the feeders are cut off. So that's somewhat the plan we have. And so the question is, how are we going to afford this? Well, the cost to do it all in 1 year is about $50,000 a year. I presented that to the board, and the enthusiastic response I got was a little dull, as you can imagine, because it's a lot of money. And but the good news is, since I presented that plan to the board, we have been able to find some private donations from members here at Bent Tree. Lake and Wildlife is going to contribute $5,000 a year. We have a private donor who's going to contribute $10,000 this year before the stocking to get 3 feeders out and the habitat, and then $10,000 in 2023, $10,000 in 2024. And we have another private donor who's agreed to pay $5,000 towards this in 2023 and 2024. So I went back to the board at the recent work session and said, I've got good news for you, and that is we're reducing our budget request down to the following. Last year we didn't stock. There was $5,500 put in the budget to stock. We carried that over, less the cost of the fish study, about $4,500 carried over that's already in the pot today, ready to go. Our normal budget request for $5,500 brings us to $10,000. It's sitting now, basically it will be sitting in the budget. So we're $10,000 ready to go. All we need is $20,000 from the board now, not the $50,000, and we've got $20,000 in private donations. Bingo, we're at $50,000. So I think it's a pretty easy call for the board, though there are no easy decisions for the board. We've got lots of expenses here in roads and so forth, but we've had a lot of support. Surprisingly, I put out on, I can't remember, with Bent Tree Community, I think, if anybody would like a copy of the fish study, please let me know. I know Mr. Unger, for example, was one, and there are numbers of others here in the room. I've had over 70 responses asking for copies of the fish study. I've missed a few people, I think. It's just got to be overwhelming. But so please let me know if you'd like a copy of the fish study. And also there's an article coming out in the Echo this month that talks about the plans and the severe decline in the fishery at Lake Tamarack and how to get the fishing back to what it was. The first thing I heard when I got here and I started to inquire about how's the fishing, what are you catching them on, and so forth, I get the same answer from everybody. It used to be so good, but it's just ruined today. People blame the grass carp. I don't know if that's the case. That grass carp are a wonderful tool to use for grass if you don't overkill it. And but we are taking steps now to bring the fishing back to where it should and have a sustainable level. I've also had a lot of people ask me, can we call the board? Can we email the board? Can we put a little pressure on them? And I've asked everybody not to do that. I just don't feel that we're in a situation where we need to lobby Congress here. What we have here is a small community with people who are working as board members, volunteering, working hard, making hard decisions. So if a board member says to me, well, I haven't heard anything about people wanting to spend money on fishing, I can have the phones ringing all night and day if they want it. But that's not the way to handle management problems here, I think, at Bent Tree, is to put together a good plan, put together a good budget, and see if the board doesn't support it. And I think we're going to get the support we need for this minimal plan that we're requiring now for fishing. Now, any questions? Yes, sir.
I have two things. First, why don't you put the study on the website so people can download it if they want it? There's no issue. It takes you out of the picture of having to try and send it.
I'm glad to do that, and I'll work with Chris, I'm assuming. I'll work with Dora to, we'll put the summary of the fish study is about 24 pages, of which about 6 pages really relate to Lake Tamarack. The rest of it's eyewash, you know how people do. And so I've summarized it. So I'll put the summary on there on the website, and I'll put the Echo article on there as well, which will be coming out here in a week or two, whenever the Echo comes out. But I'm glad to do that. I'm glad that we have that opportunity to do it.
The second point I wanted to ask is when the original discussion of fish structures was approved by Lake and Wildlife, they were going to be self-constructed. We're going to pay for the PVC, and volunteers were going to try and work together to build the structure somewhat similar to what you're talking about. That fell apart, but I guess my question is there an opportunity that we could at least make some of those structures or some supplemental structures if volunteers got together and we figured out how to do that?
You know, it's a very good point. And my thought on it is that we've got professional companies making these structures. I'm not sure we can recreate them with the right material, the right difference in the gap between, and with the private donations we have, I think the private donations are going to be used primarily to buy the hard materials, the feeders, the food, and then the habitat structures. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think I'd rather spend the money on habitat structures that are professionally done. But, you know, it's a good idea you're having. I think I'd rather buy something that was proven and effective than to try to recreate something that may not be as effective. Are there any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead. My eyes are kind of bad, so go ahead.
Again, can some of the grass carp be removed?
Well, the interesting thing about grass carp is that they're sterile, and they don't reproduce, fortunately. And they are just about at the end of their lifespan. They live for 10 to 15 years. As I've calculated it, and Art has helped me, and James Smith, and everybody who's been here before I was, it looks like we've got maybe 2 or 3 years more left of the grass carp. I don't know how you could remove them. I did happen to catch one the other day, surprisingly. It was about 15 pounds. It was crazy. I had 6-pound test line. He pulled my boat everywhere. But it was fun, I have to say. And I thought about, seriously, I said, well, maybe I should just throw it up on the bank and there's one last grass carp. And then I said, well, that's somebody's yard, and I don't want to throw a dead fish up in the yard. So I released it, but I don't know how to get rid of the grass carp. I think we're going to have to do it through attrition, and by putting the habitat structures down, we'll create that grass on the bottom and the aspects that the grass carp are taken out. And there'll become a time when we're going to have to put more grass carp in there because weeds will grow, they'll grow on the surface, and we have to control them, but we'll have to do it in a more measured way, I think, that's been done in the past.
Yes. Is Big Canoe experiencing the same problem?
Less so, because that's more of a natural lake, and they didn't put in all the grass carp that we put in. So that's, and And their trout stocking has worked for them. It didn't work for us here. At one time, at the spillway, there was a silt blockage area, or whatever you want to call it, to try to keep the fish in. I think the maintenance of it, catching trash and all that, maintenance decided to remove it. And so when trout were stocked, from what I understand, a lot of the trout went over the spillway. And the town of Jasper was ecstatic because they heard we were stocking trout, and they went down in the creek and caught all of our trout. So I don't think trout are a proper way to do it. And from what I understand from Big Canoe, their problems are nothing like ours, really.
You mentioned the heat, that it was like a bathtub in parts of the lake. Did you say that at the beginning?
Yeah. Well, the reason that the biologist said, when we had the sonar going while we were shocking fish looking at the bottom, he said, there's just no habitat here. There's no place for this little fish to hide. He said, this lake is like putting fish in a bathtub and not feeding them. That was the comment that was made. And the bathtub comment is that there's nothing on the bottom but a flat bottom and no habitat.
So the question was it hot also? Or just the bathtub, was it just the comment?
No, actually they didn't. They measured the temperature, and the temperature seemed to be very adequate. The alkalinity and pH is pretty close to being right. It was just the fertilization, so it wasn't the temperature aspect.
So Huff, I would like to ask, how do you envision, or how do you see things like the dredging, or the possibility of dredging, stirring up nutrients possibly? How does that interplay with the concept of stocking fish?
Well, that's a very good question. There are two things that are ongoing now with the lake that we need to be aware of before we stock fish. Number one is there is that pipe drain that should be fixed any day now. I'm not sure when it's going to happen, but the lake will be drawn down, and I think all that's going to be accomplished before next spring. The second thing is the dredging. The original plan that Tom Fowler told me about the dredging is that though there was an extensive amount of dredging done here years ago at quite a price with barges and so forth, the dredging that they have planned for this year and have budgeted is more from machinery from the edge of the lake, reaching out, taking out Goose Pond, maybe working in the cove area or wherever they're working. So it's not an extensive amount of dredging that's going to take place from what I understand. Now, Laird, you can correct me, but that's sort of what I understand. And Artie, y'all are on the board, and maybe, am I correct in that?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think that that's going to interfere with the stocking. I wouldn't want to stock while they're out there dredging, but I'm guessing that you're talking about a 2 to 3 week period of dredging. I may be wrong, but that's a very good question. Yes.
We don't stock till usually March or April, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So hopefully the dredging will be done by then, and the stirring up of the silt and getting it
everything should have settled.
It should have settled.
Yeah, well, that's the plan. Plan is really, I think the dredging is planned for this year, from what I understand. But you know how plans go, they get pushed back a little bit. But that's exactly what I understand. And I think by the time we stock in the spring, that all of it will settle down, and that's the plan. So I can tell you a little bit about my fishing experience, and there's some other good fishermen here in the audience that I've talked to before, and one of Neil I just met today. I fish the lake 2 or 3 times a week, and one of the greatest resources I've found is a young man who's 17 years old who used to live here. His name is Isaac. Some of you may know Isaac. I can't think of his last name, but Isaac fished this lake extensively from age 12 on, and he knew it very, very well. And I fished with him the last 2 times, and he related how good the fishing used to be. I hear it all the time, and how bad it is today. And Isaac is as good a fisherman as I've ever fished with. He's got every lure. He knows every little tree. He knows everything about the lake. And we have, 6 to 8 bass, 2 of us fishing hard for 4 hours is all we do. And they're all the same size. And he related to me how in years past, he's seen people walk away with large stringers of bluegill and so forth. Our policy here at Lake Tamarack on bluegill is they're catch and release only. The policy on the bass is you can keep 2. If they're at less than 12 inches, you need to remove them. I'm going to work with Art and James and Gerald Hunter and others that are on the committee and see if I think removing the bass at this point, the population is so low, we probably don't need to remove the smaller bass. We'd need those bass in the lake. And maybe when we introduce larger bass and we have a better balance, we can start removing those smaller bass. But that's sort of a philosophical, biological question right now.
Thank you, Huck.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, a lot of study and a lot of discussion has gone into this proposal. So thanks to everybody on the Lake and Streams Committee for working on that. I want to talk to you about the Joro Spider. As you can see, it's a very big spider. So the title, good, bad, or neutral, I don't know. Depends maybe on how you personally feel about spiders. That is about the relative size of the female to your hand. Okay, so the Joro Spider is a large, yes, Aaron? All spiders have a little bit of venom in their bite. That's how they eat, but they don't bite people. It's not like a snake. They wouldn't even try to bite you unless they were defending their life, and their mouth parts are really small, so they're not much of a hazard to people, no. Okay. They are considered, well, we're going to talk about whether they're invasive or not, but they're believed to have come in shipping containers in 2013 into Atlanta is sort of the center point. They've been radiating out from here. Their body is about 1 inch, and with their legs they're about 4 inches long, so they're pretty large, sort of like a banana spider size that you may be familiar with. That's more of a native spider, about the same size. They are spreading rapidly. They're believed to be able to survive across the entire East Coast, so the expectation is they'll be everywhere on the East Coast before too long. They have a very unique web. I think the web is probably the most distinctive way to identify them. They don't have that pretty flat, like the zipper spider and the big white intricate kind of a web that you see that we admire. They kind of have a messy, multi-dimensional structure. It's kind of golden colored. It's very strong web material. And they do often get confused with banana spiders or other orbs. How you identify the female spider, and the males are pretty small and nondescript, so they'll be often in the web with the female, but the female is what you look for. They have yellow and black banded legs. They have a large body, yellow and kind of a gray-blue stripes on it, and they have that red spot on their abdomen. And again, noting the web, and I'll have some pictures of the web. So once you see one and you get a sense for what that web looks like, then they become pretty easy to identify. So that's an example of a web that was right off of Tamarack Drive. When the sun shines on them in the early morning, they're easier to identify because it glistens off of them, and then you can kind of see them if you have the right angle. Because it's just kind of a mess. Strung, but they often are high and strung between two trees. You'll see long. They can get 10 feet deep, the webs, and they'll be strung between trees by long attachments, and then they have that really messy structure in the middle. And that's the spider. You can see her in that tangled mess of a web. Right here is where the female is. So are they harmful? An invasive organism, which is harmful, but how it's defined is it's not native to the ecosystem, and these are not native to our ecosystem. They spread prolifically, And Joro spiders do. Every egg sac is expected to contain 1,000 eggs. So from every one spider, 1,000 eggs potentially hatch next spring, and they balloon away they get on a web and the wind carries them. So there could potentially be a lot of them from every one. But do they cause economic, environmental, or human harm? That's the other definition or criteria for something to be considered invasive. And the jury's still out on that. And that you'll find, if you look them up, Google it, you'll find different points of view, even from among the experts, on whether they are harmful or not. They're definitely a nuisance. I've talked to people come into Gibbs Gardens all the time, and I've heard people say, more like in Cumming and Forsyth, where they've been overrun with them. I've heard stories like, I don't even try to use my front porch anymore because I take down 10 or 20 spider webs one afternoon, and by the next morning, there are 10 or 20 more on my front porch. And after I've done that for a few weeks, I just don't do it anymore. I just gave up the use of my front porch. Or another story, I have to take a broom to get from my house to my car because of the number of spider webs that are in my yard between my house and my car. To me, that's unacceptable. I just can't imagine. But so is that harmful? I mean, I don't know. They haven't been proven yet to be harmful in the sense of removing or limiting the number of orb weavers. They haven't been proven to limit that. Yeah, let me see, did I skip? Okay, so should we try to kill them? Here's the yes and the no about, are they harmful and should we try to kill them? They are unsightly. The webs are unsightly. I find them that way, and I kind of enjoy most spider webs, but not these. They're not pretty. Again, the stories of the porches and woodlands being overtaken. You'll find some websites that say it's a myth that they'll catch a hummingbird, but Donna, who runs the gift store at Gibbs, came in one morning late because she said she spent the morning untangling a hummingbird from a Joro spider web in her backyard and freeing the hummingbird. So I don't know, maybe it's not that common, but the strength of the webs and how deep they are, small birds, at least that's one personal example of where they are trapped in that, and I think that's unacceptable. And every one that you kill might be thousands less in the future. I just think the potential for them to grow in numbers is a little bit overwhelming, and it seems like with invasive species that we're always sort of behind the eight ball. So the idea that a small infestation is easier to control than a large one, I don't really want to wait until I can't use my porch. So we found a few on our property and have killed them. The people who say, no, they're fine, or it's too soon to tell, defend them by saying they provide food for birds. So they are a food source for birds and other things that eat spiders, and that they catch more insects in their webs. So we don't like mosquitoes, so they help us fight mosquitoes. And they won't hurt you, and they don't really hurt people unless you have a heart attack because you walked into one of the webs, I guess. But and some people say you can't stop them anyway, so don't take up that banner. I don't know. So these are the arguments that I've read about why the people who say don't kill them. If you choose to kill them, let me tell you how I do it. So if you approach it carefully, because if the female sees you coming or you make a lot of noise and disturbance, she'll go up the web and you won't be able to reach her. So I take a long skinny stick and approach the web and kind of stick the stick in at about 11 o'clock and spin it clockwise really quickly, and she gets caught up in her own web. The female is kind of trapped within the own web because she kind of hangs out in the middle. And then throw the stick on the ground. And I don't do it in flip-flops. I usually do it in boots because they're big and squishy. And then then no more of that one. So that's 1,000 less for the future. I've heard of people using long-range sprays or salt guns or something. There's something called a bug assault, So those are other ways that people are trying to get rid of them. That's what's used at Gibbs. They use that bug assault. Okay, so that's how one way or some ways to go about them. The egg sacs. Okay, so if you kill them now, they make egg sacs.
Don't they have some other spiders that are kind of like the group on there too?
The males are on there.
What do they do? I mean, are they?
I mean, from what I've heard, if you're trying to control them, the males are irrelevant. Just ignore the males. That's just. Sorry, Art. Nothing personal. That's just what I've read. Focus on the females. Eliminating the females of the species is the way to control them. That they create their egg sacs in late fall, so around the first frost. So we have a little more time to get rid of the females, and then they will have created these egg sacs, and the females die after they create their egg sacs. So they put the egg sacs in the dense part of the web, or like in a leaf that is maybe caught in the web, or at the edges if it's like attached to your house up underneath an eave. That's where you'll find the egg sacs. They are grape to ping pong ball size, so they're significant in size. You should be able to see them. Everyone contains about 1,000 eggs. You can, if you find them and pull them down, you can put them in a bucket of water that has some dish detergent in it, and that will destroy the egg sac. I guess the only challenge with looking for egg sacs is the egg sacs supposedly look identical to the yellow garden spider. So unless from recognizing the web, for a fact this is a Joro spider, that's where we don't want to risk doing more harm than good by killing the spiders that we want, are native spiders that don't have these same characteristics. Okay, so that's all on the Joro spider. Any questions about it? Has anybody seen them in their yard? Yeah? Are you killing them? Yeah? Okay. Okay. All right, so the last part of our presentation, so show of hands, how many people have been on the new website? Okay, great. Show of hands, how many people like the new website? Oh, good, about the same number. That's good. It does have a lot of good characteristics. I'm just going to go through and point out some things and make sure that you're aware. Let's see, one thing that's really exciting is the opportunity to pay your HOA fees online. So we'll be able to use online payment for our fees. You can see your statement, so I can always know how often Kenny has played golf. So that's a really good opportunity we have. Under Member Central, we have an opportunity to see the community calendar, book tea times at the golf course, book reservations at the tennis center. We have the opportunity for dining reservations. It is not live yet. I mean, it's there, but the tavern doesn't have the processes set up on their end because of, is what I've heard, they need the staffing, they need everybody back and kind of settled in.
We used it for yesterday.
And they knew your reservation at the tavern?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
We did last night.
Same? Oh, well, good. Well, I did not hear that process changed, but that's really good to hear. So I know that was the intention, and maybe it's been already put in place. So these are things that are integrated with, and most of the processes, or some of our amenities use the process before, but it was behind the scenes, and so you had to call, and then they would use the system, say, example for golf, to put it in, but now you can use it directly yourself to set up. So if the pro shop's not open, or you decide, 11:30 at night, you're going to play the next day, and you can look and see what tee times are available yourself. The same with tennis and pickleball. So I'm going to show you all of the lake and wildlife information. Funny how we'd focus there. So we have all of the latest news and upcoming events. And this is a view into the calendar. And these are what we call blogs. And this is something we'll all be focusing on. BTAC is using this, the golf, tennis, everybody will start using this. And we have a lot of opportunity for new processes in the way that Friday News works, a lot of streamlining of back-end processes. So as somebody who's communicating content out to the community, I'm excited about the efficiency that this will allow us to put things on Facebook and Nextdoor and link over to this, send out an email and link over to this. So we're only creating information about events that are coming up in one place and then leveraging it for all of our communication channels, which I think will drive a lot of efficiency in the backside of communications. Our YouTube channel, has anybody watched videos from, well, you guys are the ones that come to the meeting, so maybe you haven't need to go to the videos, but because of the work of John, which has been incredible in filming all of these, we have great presentations on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, search Bent Tree Lake and Wildlife, and you can get to it from the website, and you can all see the past presentations that you might have missed. Hiking trail information, all of our subcommittees, and what they do, and we're building out this content. So you see things like the Fishing Lake Tamarack Guide, Adopt a Stream processes, so lots of links and things that you can follow to learn more about the work of each of these subcommittees, links to the DNR, Audubon Society, Bearwise. So any kind of content that you think would be great to put online, if you find something, you have a question, and you think it'd be good, let us know, because this is going to be a great place to aggregate content. All of the administration stuff, who are the board of directors, their contact information, all of this is all online, and there is a renewed commitment to the maintenance of this information. And as you can see, I'm going through, and it's just really fast to go through this content, as opposed to the prior website. It was kind of like watching paint dry to move from page to page. Our community documents are here, a lot of good information here for AC forms and things like that. So hopefully this will be easy to navigate for you and find what you're looking for. And I want to just end with our information on public safety. We have emergency forms here for you to see and download, evacuation route information, pops right up. So it's a really nice navigation, and it navigates well on your phone too. I don't know if anybody accessed it on their smartphone as opposed to a PC. A few, you find that navigation works well on your smartphone as well. So we are trying to, here's the gatehouse information. We are trying to, with the availability of this system, not that any of our amenities or public safety is admin, and they're not going to start saying, don't call me, it's on the website, and hang up on you, but it will make their operations more efficient the more that we put things into the website. Use things like Gatehouse, make these reservations instead of making that phone call. Once you can get used to it, it'll be convenient for you, and it will make their operations more efficient, not answering the phones for things that could be done this way. So give it a try. Firewise video, Michael wanted me to point out this Firewise video here, and I've taken a look at this. I think he sent it out in Friday News, and this is a great video. So spend some time and peruse this information. Any lake and wildlife content you'd like to see added, let me know. And the webmaster, so I'm sure that Chris Felt is also taking suggestions for content. So don't hesitate to let us know. The communications committee that worked on this, myself, Buddy was part of that, Artie was part of that, Tony Young, Nancy Thurber, are always adding new content and thinking of ways to serve the community. I want to also point out the directory. Last thing, the directory here. there's a lot of opportunity if this information is maintained, well maintained by you. There's a lot of opportunity for groups like Lake and Wildlife to leverage this information and not have to do our own email distribution list. And again, as people who work in the leadership of teams across the community, efficiency is important. You know, I mean, I like to get out there and be in the streams and do hike the trails and things like that, not sitting behind a computer maintaining an email list, right? That's no fun for anybody. So to be able to leverage this and have a Lake and Wildlife email go out to people who have self-subscribed to those emails, maintaining their own contact information is something I'm really looking forward to. Friday News will start to be driven by this in the not too distant future, and all of our big committees will be able to leverage this technology to get information pushed out to people who have subscribed to it. So I think it's a great, it'll be a great efficiency all the way around, and it relies on you going to this site and making sure that your information is current here. Buddy?
If I could, it's going to be a little confusing, okay? So this directory information is on the website. In the next month or so, you're going to get an email asking you to update your contact information for the printed directory. So you know, there's two different databases, there's two different things. We tried to integrate them. We've not been successful. Yet. So when you get the information, the email saying update your information for the printed directory, you have to update it there, and you also have to update it here. It's two different databases, okay? We apologize for the inconvenience. That's what it is.
What if you're new and you're not in the directory yet?
Then we should already have your information. If you fill out a water, if you have water in your house, we know you're here. And you should have gotten an email from Danny Day. But in any case, your information's been sent to KDA, the publisher of the printed directory, and you'll get an email from them.
What if the better half doesn't want to be in the directory?
Just tell us you don't want to be in the directory. It's easy enough. In the same way on the website, by the way, you can go on the website and decide what information can be shared and what can't. And you should feel free to do that. Everybody should go update your information on this website, because you can put in as much as you want. You can decide what other people can see and what they can't see.
Right.
That's all up to you.
Yes, you can. You hit this little pencil right here by your name to edit the information, and you can hide it. You can make it hidden. So you can control that, what's shown to other people who would be searching this directory. And yet historically, this information is what was in Jonas, which was BTCI's CRM system. It's what they used for sending out assessments and things like that. And so it was completely separate from the BTAC printed community directory. And they didn't touch. Now, with the advent of this website, we have the opportunity to bring those processes together. We haven't quite done that yet, but that's on everybody's agenda. So I would say by this time next year, we'll be dealing with one and only one data source, which will be through here. So it's kind of a timing thing for right now.
Do a husband and wife need to set up their own?
Yes. Well, every login is associated with one email, and I think depending on how you use the website, so if both of you are making reservations for pickleball times or tennis court times or tea times or dining reservations, when we start doing, we have the opportunity to do registration for events through this. It will probably behoove you to have two separate logins, because you may be wanting to not be in the same place at the same time always, or have one sign up that gets confusing about who's actually coming. So having two separate logins, or one per person, would be, I think, the best way to approach it.
Two questions. One, is the information that you have, did it come from the directory or did it come from the administrator?
It didn't, this started from administration. It did not start from the BTAC printed directory.
So if we're going to make a correction to directory, we do it on the other database, I'm assuming.
If you have to treat them as two separate, completely separate things right now, acknowledging that that's inefficient for you as a resident, and acknowledging that that's something that hopefully will come together and be one data source feeding both processes.
And what is the address for the website?
You can get to it from the same address that the old website was, or you can, I mean, it's there, that Bent Tree Clubhouse. I mean, the old one was simpler, but in Friday News, there's information about how to register for it, what you need to do to register for it, and then you will get an email sent to you with the information to set up your login. Right? Yes, Mary Jane?
It's still private, correct? It's still private?
As in within the community private,
Correct.
yes.
No one outside of the community can
Yes.
search your name and find you there?
That is correct.
Okay.
There are some pages on here which are shared between our external view of Bent Tree and our internal view of Bent Tree. There's some content that is accessible in both ways, but the directory is not part of that content. The directory is, you have to have logged in first to get to the directory. And you have to be validated as living in Bent Tree to get a login assigned to you by admin. Any other questions about the website? Okay, well, we are going to adjourn. I will point out one more time that Michael and Trevor are in the back, especially if you're new here or you don't understand any emergency preparation stuff. They've got all kind of material in the back for you to see, talk to you about your evac route, make sure you know where that is, and your secondary evacuation route, all of that kind of information. Please see them. And thanks for coming today. All right.